start kicking off, and as people join, we can welcome them in. I see that the number's going up slowly, so I assume people will slowly trickle in the next 5 minutes. So hi everyone, and welcome to our ThoughtWorks webinar today. My name is Angela Bishop, and I'm Head of Solutions from ThoughtWorks UK, and I'm going to be your host for today. In the webinar today, we'll actually be taking you through our experience of having to rapidly move our China-based employees to remote working, whilst continuing to maintain consistency of delivery for our clients. Our clients' need for continued delivery and their deadlines did not stop because of COVID-19, particularly in January when it was only affecting China rather than the entire world. Now, our China offices have around 1,800 people working in them. And we serve clients not only in China, but also in the broader Asia area, Australia, Europe, the UK, and also the US. We'll also cover today what we've been focusing on internally at ThoughtWorks over the past couple of years that has enabled us to move to remote working so quickly. Our entire company globally is now remote working for some or all of the time, as many of you are also. Before we get started today, I'd just like to go through a few housekeeping items with you. You can ask questions whenever you have one, either during the event or during the QA period at the end, by clicking that QA icon at the bottom of your webinar panel. And I'll host a bunch of questions at the end for around 15 minutes. You will also have you'll notice your microphone's been muted, and this will ensure the highest quality of sound for us during the session. And we'll also be recording today's session, and you'll all receive a copy of that recording. So now let's introduce today's speakers. First up, we have Wang, who's head of our offshore for the EU market. Now, Huan is based in China and engages with our clients in the UK and Europe and manages the delivery of large-scale technology projects with our distributed teams in China. Next, we have Rocky Liu. Rocky heads our Technical Operations Center in China, which has a team of 130 plus technologists, providing technology evolution services for the digital products we build for our clients. And next up, we have April Johnson, who is our global change lead for the Office of the CIO. And April leads our internal strategic IT change initiatives globally. And she's been a part of our multi-year journey from application support to a technology-enabled business. Huan and Rocky will talk through their first-hand experience for around 30 minutes. April will take around 10 to 15 minutes on our internal activities that have put us in this good position to remote work. And then I'll host a Q&A for around 15 minutes. So over to you, Rocky and Huan.
Thank you, Ange. So hello, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for joining us for today. So today, for the pandemic and the COVID-19 part, especially for us in China, we want to share with you kind of like the storyline of the story of the timeline since end of last year to mid-March in China, which was the overall development of the pandemic in China. And because I live quite a long time in different countries, so I'm quite aware of the culture and the ideology differences between different countries, between each countries. So by sharing the story we're having and the key actions we're having today with internally how we manage the situation and how we communicate with our client to make sure our delivery excellency is continuously governed even during the challenge time. It's not saying that this is the best practice or you should adopt this, right? So because I'm pretty sure everyone who joined today had put your best effort and the strategy with dealing the challenging situation so far. But I hope by sharing our stories, we can look at the things we did, kind of like learning from our past. And if that can trigger some of the thinkings or ideas for us to face in the new normal, that will be the best achievement for us today. So with that, let's go start with the story. So as now everyone know, this new novel coronavirus start in December last year and starting in China, and the first few cases emerged in China. And here you can see in the picture and the timeline, it was until early January this year, how it was development. So in the picture here on the left is actually a shopping mall next to our Wuhan office. And the picture on the right side is our team in our Wuhan office during that time. So although there's some news in China already by that time about this unknown disease, but because this is at that moment, no one was really taking big attention to that and hugely underestimated the virus. And plus, because this is a time for Chinese that we're preparing for the Lunar New Year, which happened in the late January. So people are busy with their shoppings, their life routines, as well as for us in our office, continuously working on our distributed software delivery for our clients. As indicated here, one of the team is actually having a remote meeting already by then with our client. So things developed fast, especially for this new virus. So since early Jan until January 21st, there are some key things happened during the time. For the virus itself and for the COVID-19 itself, as you see on the left of the screenshot, this is actually from a Wuhan local health system bureau that in January 18th, there are already cases reported about the details of this new virus and the COVID-19 cases. However, as I mentioned earlier, there's still business-wise, everyone is back in their normal status and everyone is keep working. And you see in the pictures shooted in our Wuhan office, that team is doing code reviews in the afternoon and pairing together with each other on the work. But something to worth mentioning internally for us is that because it developed really fast, although by then the media or the government official news haven't announced anything yet, we already starting to prepare for the situation because we think this might develop to something intense. So we first established our ThoughtWorks China Wuhan office emergency team. So the key office leaders and the people team, etc., in our Wuhan, from our Wuhan office, starting already working together to prepare if there are any emergency situation coming in, as well as starting to communicate it with the clients who their teams based in the Wuhan office that there's a potential we will start working remote, and that could happen really fast. So at this moment, we're also keeping an eye with everyone who's working in our Wuhan office that they're okay, basically, with the situation and overall, their well-beings are being really taken care of. So one key moment for us was actually on the day of January 21st this year. So before the Chinese government make any decision or publish any decisions, we already decided due to the serious of the situation happened in Wuhan and the dramatic development by then, we decided to close our Wuhan office. And this here on the slides, you can see is the picture of our Wuhan office. So the emergency team at this moment informed our clients from Wuhan and the teams, both on the teams level and on the account level, that due to the situation, we'll have to close our Wuhan office and the team will start to work remote or starting to prepare remote working or even remote inceptions after the Chinese New Year, because this is 3 days before the Chinese New Year holiday. And here on the page, you can see on January 23rd, that was actually the Chinese government officially announced the lockdown of the city, of the Wuhan city. So on the slides, the image on the left is the shot of the city after the lockdown. But during this time, we definitely see that this potentially will not be contained in Wuhan itself. And we think that due to the development, especially very dramatic development of the situation, the whole China, the whole country level will be impacted eventually on some point. So that's why we made the decision before the lockdown to formally form our China emergency team with all the extended leadership team from ThoughtWorks China. So basically, in the middle of the screenshot is actually the WeChat communication channel we had about the emergency situations, and we talk about how to facing the situation and preparing for extended lockdown in China. And on the right, it's a screenshot that you can see, although by then we really don't know what will be the local policies from each cities where our office is located in, but we started to do some predictions and arrangement of either maybe there'll be holidays or working from home, etc. And some of the other key actions we had was that we knew by then that the medical supplement will be in really intense needs by then. So we quickly working with our finance and our admin team to allocate some special budget to purchase a lot of the face masks and disinfectants and shipped to the Wuhan city, even after the lockdown. And we figured a way to because some of the local logistics are still working, so not everything went through, but we did that. So later, people from our company, if they have a need, they can go to the office to pick up. So we did already some preparation before that. And on the other side, with our clients, we start with communicating with all our clients already at this moment, because the development in China, we think there's a high possibility that after the Chinese New Year, even maybe during the Chinese New Year holiday, all the cities will be under lockdown, which means we will start work from home. So we start already communicating with our clients. So moving on, this page is actually, as mentioned, during the Chinese New Year holiday, and the government later extended from 7 days to 10 days. So for us, this is the holiday season and the most important one, and everyone is stay at home. However, the ThoughtWorks China and the emergency team definitely didn't stop working. We did a lot of actions to prepare for the coming week, because we know after the New Year holidays week, we will starting to work remotely with our client and continually to support the delivery of the projects. So here are some screenshots internally we did. You see on the left, it's the masks we prepared. And in the middle, it's our amazing tech ops team did to enable our VPN service, the bundleize, and the infrastructure is ready for everyone working remote. I won't put too much effort here. I think April will go through with more details later. And on the right side, it's actually a screenshot of our security guideline, because working from home and not in the office, even though we're using the VPN to connect all the working environment, but we want to make sure the laptops we're using from ThoughtWorks or from the client side, their mobile phones, or any tools we used for conduct software delivery should be under the security guideline for both us as well as for our client guidelines. So we did tons of preparation and communication on this side to make sure basically we can start working remote with our client expectation after the Chinese New Year. And the key actions in this week to the client, as mentioned earlier, we started before the New Year, but this is the week we also learn better about the situation in China and communicated with our client about options to starting work remotely after the Chinese New Year. So here, this is the first week, right? So it's the first week after the Chinese New Year holiday and starting working remotely. And eventually the outbreak or the pandemic grows again dramatically during this period of time. However, most of our people keep focusing on focusing on things we're working with our client or the project with the client. On the internal side, what we did is to communicate with the team and set up the account on the project level delivery guidelines, especially some key metrics of the remote performance, and then align with our client to make sure the remote working situation won't impact the quality of our work we did and worked with our client together. And we conduct some remote inceptions or kickoff of the team due to the constraints of the travel. And we continually taking care of our employees, and we extended the assistant program for the employees, as well as the mental health consulting 24/7 hotlines we had with a third-party vendor to make sure everyone is safe and have their well-being being taken care of if they have any questions or doubts. And from the client perspective, we communicated basically for the first week, most of the teams on a daily basis about the progress, about what we did on that day. And from the weekly perspective, about the week's performance as the metrics we defined, and to make sure that the delivery is not impacted. And if there are any, and discuss with our client together to figure out what's the change we're gonna take to improve it. So in the image you see here on the left is actually a remote inception we did during that week with one of our clients from Australia, from Singapore. And the screenshot in the behind, it's the team who was working remotely. On the right side is some of the town hall meeting screenshot we had during this time, because we want to make sure our people are fully supported and connected.
Yep.
Moving on, this is the third, and starting from the third and second and third weeks, there are also, because a lot of the challenge sitting at home, not going out, we really want to also make sure the energy of our people and the motivations are kept in track and people are still having fun, right? So work is not the only thing. We want to make sure people are fine. So Rocky is gonna help us introduce some of the exercise we did.
Yeah, here I can share some practices and stories about we are doing some activities to relieve stress for our team members. You know, my team have 130 members distributed in 6 different cities, like Wuhan, Chengdu, Xi'an. So actually, we are work from home since 21st January. So after, I think all of the team members from that time are working from home. So I think first week is very smooth. It's people feel good. And at the second and third week, I start to receive some requests. Our team members they really want to go back to office due to several reasons. For example, some of the team members, they feel like they feel alone, just stay at home, just they want to communicate with other team members. And also some of the team members, they feel that like they don't want to mix life and work together, and a lot of the even the complaints. So we noticed that we need to do something to let people to relieve the stress. You can see the screenshot as the left picture. This is showing that some of the team they're doing the bodybuilding exercise following the video, and some of the team members, they changed the background of their Zoom, a virtual background of their Zoom. It looks they're doing exercise outside. So the people doing exercise together and laughing together. And also the middle one is some of the team, they're doing the karaoke competition. And if you won, you get the most votes, and you will get some gifts. And I think there is a better practice is that it's an online town hall. So our business unit, we have 130 people I mentioned. So we need to keep update our the company's policy and also the pandemic situations to everybody to let everybody make clear what kind of difficulty we are facing, and also to let people understand our policy. And also there is a very useful functionality is in Zoom is annotation. If open this one, when the speaker they're speaking, everybody can type in on the screen, and you can see the screenshot at the right is when I update something, people they're typing out their feelings and encourage each other, and this hugely improved the team role and also let us knowing the feedback very quickly. And also we're celebration, we order cake for the people who are whose birthday in that month. We are a celebration together in a remote way. We are eating cakes. And also the new hair, they introduce themselves. So I think this is a really good practice. So during this, these activities help us improve the team role and help us to update the message to the team. I think it's hugely improved the efficiency of the remote delivery work. I think Huan also will show some data. It's proved this as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Rocky. So here on this page, it's you can see it's the first week of the working remote time back then. And the screenshot here is actually one of the team from our Wuhan office, and the matrix we defined with the client together about their performance. And I'm showing here because this week marks the month of us doing remote working. So normally we define account level governance meetings, most of the cases with our client on a quarterly basis or half-year basis. But during this time, we want to make sure this is moved into a faster cycle of feedbacks. So we did that, most of the team did that on a monthly basis. So this is the first month. On the screenshot here, as you can see from the team, that if you see the apologize for the fonts are big, small, but basically if you see the most right far end, the last two iterations marks the remote working started. So on the left, it's the velocity of the team. As you can see, the consistency wasn't changing in the big picture. And in the middle, the orange line in the top is actually the average commitment story points for each iteration which was delivered in the end. So for the last two iterations, which this team had worked remotely, you can see the commitment of the delivery confirmed after the iteration was above 90% of their commitment points. So that's another stability. And the last picture or the screenshot that you see here is actually the story scopes or the point scopes for each iteration. You see on the latest two iterations for that team, the consistency of the change of the original scope during the iteration didn't change too much. I think this is also important to know or to measure, because that the team, when they start to work remote, is not only the delivery team, right? It's also with our client business stakeholders, with our product owners, even with our third-party partners together. So the communication doesn't mean only for the delivery team, but in the end, to support the business value, the communication is spread in the whole team. So we want to make sure that we track this to also have the team have a fair understanding of that there are not too many back and forth, basically, because of lack of communication impacted the scope of the iteration. So this is, of course, just one example. I'm sure each teams have different metrics or ways to align with their clients together about whether their productivity is consistency during the remote situation. There are another cases or example later, but I think it's very important for us to learn that during this time, it's very important to figure out what's the most important thing to measure to make sure that the remote is not impacted hugely. And the more importantly is if there's some impact, what's the action we should take and what the changes should be to improve the situation. So here you see moving on, this is till the mid of March, where this picture already indicated that the pandemic in China almost moving to the second phase, which is definitely more quieter. And most of the cases, not the cases, but most of the patients are cured in China. And the image from the left is taken in the hospital, which was newly built because of the pandemic in Wuhan, that after the last patient was released by the hospital, the nurses and the doctors finally get the time to sit down together and to rest. And to us, which means with the more and more positive news happening in China, we're starting to prepare the new normal, which is back to the office and working from the office. So in the middle, you can see we hired the professional teams to help with the disinfecting the office and clean the office fully, so that when people are coming back, they feel safe and they are okay to working in the office. And on the right, it was actually a picture we took on March 18th that you see our colleagues are working in office wearing the face masks and stay some distancing, social distancing with each other still. And I think this probably is more important to share here because with the development of the pandemic globally, now I'm sure most of you are also considering what would be the time to return to the office and start normal. So one of the key things we did, other than to make all the safety measures and dealing specifically with the virus, was also that we worked with our teams and worked on this 50-50 model, basically. So for each team, we have 50% of the team member in working office, and the other 50% stay remote. This is to overall reduce the risk or even any potential or risks we don't know. And in the same way, because some people during this time also would prefer work remote, and we, of course, align and communicate with our client together. So here, last but not least of the story, this is actually an image shoot in the Wuhan office before the pandemic, and this is one of the team we had in Wuhan office. So even today, Wuhan in China is released under the lockdown, and things are more back to normal, but we still didn't open our Wuhan office yet, and we're preparing for it, and I'm sure everyone would be more than happy to get back to the office and see each other and work together. So yeah, that's basically the first part of the story and the timeline. And a few more things to share before moving to April is that some of the key points of the remote delivery governance we had. We don't want to spend too much time here because most of the things actually was mentioned already during the story introduction. And we had the remote working playbook published by ThoughtWorks. So there are a lot of details and guidelines, and please feel free to have a look. There are a lot of awesome suggestions and ideas. But just quickly, some of the key guidelines, we definitely think faster reaction and over communication, remote infrastructure ready, it was the key, and people health with the tracking and support, both on the physical level, but also from the emotional level, right? And last but not least, it's the remote performance we identified together with our client. And you see here is one of the screenshot of the communication we did with all our clients during the pandemic, basically to provide transparency of among all the ThoughtWorks offices in China, what's the situation within us and what's the situation with the city. And here is the metrics we saw already. And here is another example, just quickly to mention that this was actually a Shanghai on-site team from South China. And this also for this team, here are a few metrics they defined with the client. Similarly to the last one, but they also basically everything on the right side of the purple line was the team after they start working remote. And you can see most of the metrics was consistent with before. So in the end, we also, because now most of the team in China was already back to the office, and under this 50-50 guidelines, here is some the feedback we also we received from our clients in China. So during the intense 1 to 2 months, I would say, in China, we definitely not only wants to make sure we support with our client with their business value even under the pandemic and the critical moment, as well as we see that because everyone is staying home, there are actually a lot of online traffic going on, and we're also working with our definitely clients on the DevOps and the infrastructure perspective, and we provide the support maintenance services for our clients all over the globe, as well as in some cases, even for the 24/7 support, because I think this is something with the new normal of everyone working remote, probably will have an impact or already had an impact in your business. So do you have, Rocky had a story to share here as well?
Yep, thanks Juan. I think we do have some cases like you said. We have one a North American client. They are provide the online education service for in North American market. So because some of the schools are be locked down, so and also we found that we have a SRE team to take care of the client's infrastructure and also do support maintenance for their services. So we found that during last month, it have the user, I think the number of the users growing so fast for their service. So maybe this because of the lockdown. A lot of people stay at home. They start, the students start study things through the online education service. So we met some challenges. For example, some of the services face under a big pressure, and also some of the we need to improve the CI/CD process to let the new features to go to market quickly. So how we solve this, resolve this challenge, face these challenges. So we increase the 24/7 on-call resources to resolve the online incidents in time. And we start to improve highly automated the CI/CD infrastructures and also make the architecture more flexible. So this is just one example. I believed for in another business area, maybe face the same situation.
Thanks, Rocky. So with that note, this is the first part of our topic today. And so I will then hand on to Ange and April.
Thanks, Juan and Rocky. So we're going to hand over to April now, who's our global change lead. And just a reminder that throughout the conversation, feel free to add your questions into the Q&A at the bottom of the webinar panel. We've got a few questions coming through, but we're happy to take more. So keep those questions coming. Over to you, April.
Great, thanks. All right, so I'm going to tell you a very, very short story of basically the history of ThoughtWorks IT over the last 10 years. In order to help everybody on the call who's thinking from the internal IT perspective, think a little bit about the future. So like the guys have done, I'm going to do a little storytelling to help you start thinking about the story of what's next. So you saw a little bit from what Juan and Rocky shared about what our focus had been around tech. And the thing that I'm proudest of as I hear the story coming back from our colleagues in China is you may notice that there was not a lot of mention of what tools they used, for instance. And I'm proud of that because I think that means the tools were already there. And the tools were there because, in part because of the way that we've designed and thought about IT inside ThoughtWorks. So we are constantly thinking about what's coming next. But especially we're thinking from the standpoint of IT services as a product. I think most people probably don't imagine that your email or your document collaboration or your video conferencing solution is a service that you provide to your colleagues, and that it has a roadmap for the future and a natural evolution and a direction that it needs to flow. But I'm proud to say that at ThoughtWorks, we have been thinking about that for the better part of 5 years. So because of that, I think we were more ready than many people to shift our entire China and then eventually the entire ThoughtWorks world to remote work with relatively little pain, so that we could then focus more on the human aspect of that change, as Rocky was talking about earlier, helping people feel connected, helping people feel less alone, and continuing to get all the work done that we value and our clients value. And a lot of that came down to just having tools that we already knew, and so people didn't have to adopt a whole lot more change. But there's some lead up to that I'll tell you a little bit about. Part of what's underpinning all of this inside ThoughtWorks and inside our own IT, which, by the way, a number of our IT internal folks are also in Wuhan. We've got a pretty strong delivery center presence there. So this is work that actually came out of Wuhan in some ways. So under all of this, we are always thinking as IT, as being about empowering thought workers and our clients, thinking about those people, our colleagues first. And one of the things we're most proud of at ThoughtWorks is all of the combined knowledge and collective impact across this whole huge network of thought workers. Those of you who are already our clients will know that every thought worker you interact with is able to draw on the combined experience and knowledge of 7,000 people in the background. And that makes a huge amount of difference. So everybody else, by the way, across the rest of ThoughtWorks was drawing on the knowledge of China. And we continue to do so as China gets its way out of the pandemic. And the rest of us are still locked in our houses, no matter what our Zoom backgrounds might show you. So the beginning of our story is actually not too long ago. We were a Lotus Notes shop. It's a little bit of a dirty secret. We were on Lotus Notes for all of our IT for much longer than you might imagine. But over time, users like Juan, Rocky, and everyone on this call started to really ask for what you would call consumer grade applications. So the rest of the world was evolving things like Gmail and moving things to the cloud. And that was the impetus for us to start to move to the cloud. It was what our users wanted, and it was designing for their future needs. We also have a strong tradition of something called shadow IT at ThoughtWorks. Shadow IT is often thrown around as a bad word, by the way. It just means that there is an IT function, and then there's also, outside of that main IT function, people have wants and needs, and thought workers are technologists at heart. So we will go make those wants and needs appear if our central IT doesn't do that. And we've actually decided over time to encourage that and let new and interesting discoveries happen. And some of, by the way, our use of collaboration technology comes from what we saw folks in China using initially. And then finally, like I think a lot of you, we are constantly growing, and our scale and distribution around ThoughtWorks has continued to grow to the point where on-premise traditional IT stopped making sense for us many years ago. And speaking of that, by the way, when we think about what we value at ThoughtWorks and life here, that growth is not just about gaining scale. It's giving us the ability to meet a wide array of client needs. And that comes with new and different needs for project teams, for clients, and for individual thought workers. So over time, we've tried to make our own internal IT a strategic partner to that. But that also means that we've got to be ready for fairly rapid change. We've got to have flexibility at heart. And again, this, to my mind, this always comes back to designing those services and those products for our colleagues' probable future needs, which for us includes giving everybody a little bit of flexibility about what they use and how. It's a really short part of our story, by the way. I could talk to you about this for an hour if you'd like. Feel free to reach out to me later if you want to talk about organizational structure for hours. We have continually evolved our internal IT organization around this principle, Conway's Law, which at heart says you will design systems and processes that match whatever structure and communication you have in place. So we have thought continually to evolve with that in mind. So back when we were on Lotus Notes, our IT organization was one relatively small blob. This was when ThoughtWorks was 500 or 600 people. We handled laptops and we handled infrastructure, and that was all we did. But as I mentioned, as we started to think about, oh, our colleagues need proper applications that they can use to get their work done, we're like, all right, let's have proper applications. And every application had a team, which, by the way, is where I've seen a lot of our client internal IT sort of stop here. But that didn't make sense for us. I'm not sure it makes sense actually for most people. So we started to move from that application-centric, like apps, laptops, that's all we did, worldview, to starting to think about every team a little bit more functionally, and thinking about the future of each segment as a product. And we started this in the sense of like, how do we do staffing as a product? And so there are some applications that apply to that too. But pretty quickly we were like, all right, well, actually, let's start to evolve that a little more. Let's turn end user support into its own product. And we'll still keep kind of core infrastructure as this special case. And then eventually the logical conclusion for us was everything in IT is a product with a roadmap, with a vision, with some design and service thinking underneath it, pointed whether that's at offices and the things people do in offices, which had been a very central construct in our IT until about a month ago. And that continually evolving perspective on getting our colleagues' work done. A change that I think made a huge difference for us is starting to move away from thinking about there's your office and there's your laptop to there is a workspace. So Rocky and Huan may or may not have known this, but for a while we've had workspaces teams in China and in every other country focused on what you need to get your job done, which meant that everybody had tools at hand, whether they were working on a train or working in an office or working, should they need to, from home. Everyone started to have a number of those tools, and we started thinking about building our network, building our connectivity, building our connections with each other based on that construct. And meanwhile, all of the other underlying IT systems like identity and access management, for instance, and core email and stuff like that, those are all also product teams with roadmaps. In the case of email, for instance, a roadmap very connected to the continual evolution of Gmail. So, and then this starts to look more complicated over time as we've now grown from roughly 500 people to 7,000 people in the last 5 minutes. We have shifted more and more towards a design-led approach to things. So we think about our overall ThoughtWorks strategy. We think about where we want to change, and we think about all of that connected up sort of to a design center. And when we say design, we don't mean how does this look on your screen, although of course that's useful. We're thinking about what is the easiest road that our colleagues can take to get their work done. What is it that they need? And more importantly, what are they going to need? Or where might their needs change or vary from person to person? And that is logically evolving from just the workspace to really a direction towards working from anywhere. That is actually not going to be a tremendous leap, I think, for our teams and our colleagues over the coming months, because a lot of that underpinning stuff is already there. We've been designing for remote distributed communication structures for years, and that turns out with, we've got a lot of tools underpinning things, and it's pretty easy to make that shift. So, speeding you very, very quickly through our story, I just want to remind you of a few lessons that I think are really valuable for anybody in the new world of work. So honestly, just start where you are now. Most people have a suite of tools that are going to do 80% of the things that they need in order to move to a remote, anywhere as possible kind of work world if you haven't done so already. For us, that was mostly Google. It handles most of our collaboration needs, although you saw a number of points about VPN capability in China. So while VPN's not centered to the rest of our world, except for our clients, in China, we want to make sure that everybody's got reasonable access to our Google tools. And so VPN is a big deal for us in China. And then for the other things, we've got a number of tools out there that help us collaborate, design, do work with our clients that kind of fit into the 20% space, where we encourage exploration, experimentation, and sort of thinking about what the next service or product need is likely to be. And that we're very much in this space now as we look around and we realize we are not going back to the world the way it was exactly, but maybe we can go back to one that's better and healthier for our teams and healthier for our clients. So what does that future of work look like for you? It's probably different for every individual in every company. And on that note, I will hand it back over.
Thanks, April. So we've got a few questions now coming through. So I'm going to share them out across our panelists. We've got a couple of questions about the key performance metrics. So Huan and Rocky, could you just cover again what those key performance metrics were we used? And then also we have a question to say, were we surprised at how consistent they were? Or, did we question that?
Yeah, I can share some of the opinion on my side. So as mentioned earlier, I think this is definitely each team should define the performance metrics themselves, right? So they're not universal rules for all the teams. Although one of the things I think we really, most of the teams are tracking, are aligned with the 4 key metrics. And velocity definitely is another thing we track for most of the teams. I think what's more important is to view the situation of the team or the purpose of the team. And this might be looking surprisingly, that is the consistency of the performance. But that's one of the how to say that in English? One of the reasons for that was that, excuse me, most of our team in China were working already in the remote or distributed setup in default. So our clients, they're all over the globe, as Ange mentioned at the beginning, so that the team was already doing the remote working with our client together. So they measure this metrics with them already, even way long before the pandemic. So that's the reason the consistency of the performance is indicated. Maybe one thing to add on that is that, again, I think each team definitely should think about your team's dynamic and metrics, and what's the most important thing you want to measure for the success of the team. I mean, if I'm working in the client team on site, pairing with our client developers together on that setup, I would definitely think maybe velocity is not the most valuable metrics for me, because there are other more important topics we're doing during the delivery or during the work we're working together. So in that setup, you want to think about what makes sense for you. But for us, I think we were in a way already familiar with the remote working. It was just spreading even more for everyone working in their home. So that might be the result of the case. Yeah.
Okay, so just to summarize there, you were saying, so velocity was one of the metrics. Obviously, we saw that on those graphs. And then also, I think I saw that for some of the teams that stakeholder collaboration was one of the metrics that we measured, just to make sure that there was no lag as we started to have a bunch of conversations, a lot more remotely than we were having.
Yeah.
And then about automation and releases, so just so that we continue to see that we could push things out live and meet deadlines in that way to our clients' customers, I guess, with some of the things that you showed. So just to cover them off. And you were, as you mentioned, you were not surprised at consistency, because already that was something we were regularly tracking. So we've got another question here about whether how we're still working right now, in terms of, are we, what's the setup for our China offices, and are we in the office, are we at home, and what's the mix?
Yeah, because I'm in the Xi'an office now, so I can share some of the status in Xi'an office, and the people are still follow the policy, need to keep the 2 meters distance with each other. People are still wear the face masks when they're programming. And also, I think for Xi'an office, actually, because the pandemic situation is not so serious as Wuhan, actually, I think it's more than 50 employers in the office now. And also, some I saw in the question list, also some of the audience, they care about how they do pair programming. Actually, I find it's very interesting. Some of the team members, they're using the tools to share screen with each other to control their screen to do the pairing programming. This is, I think this is a very good innovation, because they are maybe they're just sitting with each other. They use the tools just to keep 2 meters distance, so follow the policy. Yeah,
it's actually interesting you mentioned that, Rocky, because we have another question that's about how we pair programming and social distancing.
Yep. Sorry, I answered this in this question. So, yeah, you maybe wear why don't you wear the face mask? Because I'm in the meeting room with nobody. Yeah. Okay.
Right. What about other offices there at the moment? Are we still getting back to the sort of normal?
So as far as I know, other than the Wuhan office, most of our other offices are under the same circumstance. And also our client projects, because in China, we also have tons of projects working with the client on site. So we also align with our client on what should be the arrangement or the setup for the team. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we have another question here about, did this crisis lead to any kind of cultural change in your teams that you've noticed?
Yep. For my team, I think it's not called a culture change. It's just a working way be changed. I think the culture is not really related to how far you see with each other, and I think we still use remote tools to do the retro pairing programming stand up, and also we are doing the IPM normally, and every best practice we can still have like I mentioned before, they still can have a way to do pairing program. So I think culture not be changed, but I think the working way be changed a lot, because the daily stand-up need people to stand, right? You sit before a screen and to update your some of your work, and I think, but we've already worked from home for a long time, so people get used to this. But I think we're not finding that people are like to just stay at home to work from home, because really a lot of our team members complain about, I don't want to take care of a kid because kids, they don't go to school, right? They stay together to work together. This is really a trouble for them. I really want to go to work. I don't want to stay at home. I heard a lot about this. So yeah, this is a reality. Don't worry about your, I saw there is one question, worry about the employee. They really want to stay at home, they don't, working from home.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good try. Yeah.
Good. Cool.
Just want to quickly add on that. One thing I observed is definitely people are more aware, right? So people are actually, you think we're social distancing, we're sitting in our home, and we're not getting access to the world, but it actually create awareness of the team member, understand now better what's your challenge, what's others' challenge, and they definitely trying to communicate with each other more and support each other more. I think that's a really good thing to see. Yeah,
it's a really good point, Huan. I think everyone's got a lot more empathy for everyone's individual circumstances now and what they're having to kind of battle with, I guess, each day in order to come to work, you know? So yeah. Sorry, April, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, one of the things to be aware of, especially if you're starting a newer team in this world right now, is you have to create that sense of empathy. So if you've had time working together face to face, some of that comes about naturally through the conversations that pop up. But if you haven't had that yet, you actually have to do some deliberate activities. And I was happy to see Huan and Rocky share some of that work that has happened on our teams in China, because our teams everywhere are having to do more like do a personal canvas about who I am and how I work and what I'm contributing. And by the way, what's happening behind me while I'm trying to do my day-to-day work, as a number of people do have their kids in the house in a way that you know, that was not the working from home remote future that any of us anticipated, is that you would be not just home, but home with your kids on their screens doing their homework. So make sure that you take the time to create that personal level of interaction in these remote circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Great. And now actually another question for you, April, is what were some of the techniques that we use to anticipate sort of the future demands of the team and what ThoughtWorkers required around the world?
Sure. So we have a couple of things that we do. One is we use a lot of service design and just general design techniques. So most of our teams maintain an end-to-end map of who are their customers, whether those customers are clients or ThoughtWorkers, and what do those people do in their day-to-day lives, and where are they having pain points or experiencing change today. So that gives us the ability to think like, okay, here's what we would like to be doing in the future from the standpoint of our customer, which for our IT folks internally is mostly our colleagues at ThoughtWorks. So that's a big part of what we're doing. The other is also making sure that some of our strategists spend some part of their time focused on looking at what's out in the market, building relationships with our vendors so that we can influence their roadmaps in the direction of our colleagues' needs, and being aware of the general evolution of work for our clients, our competitors, and our colleagues, and just always having a very open door to talk to other ThoughtWorkers about that.
Great, thanks, April. I'm going to do 2 more questions. There's quite a lot coming through, and sorry, we're not going to get a chance to answer all of them. We've got one here regarding clients. Says, have we found clients starting to look at making their products more resilient for events like COVID-19 or other things that could happen in the future, and whether that's actually products or platforms, you know, or systems?
Yeah.
Rocky?
I can share some of the experience from my team, actually from our clients. Actually, there is a joke that people are saying that COVID-19 drive the digital transformation. Actually, it's changed a lot because our clients, their team also their work from home. So previous some manual process need to be automation, right? Because you cannot just go to the data center or something, your machines to manually to deploy your software. And also a lot of I think infrastructure investment be putting a very high priority. So this is not it's very different from what in normal place in the normal time. So I think previously I think the clients want to invest more on their products features. They always have a tech deck on infrastructure and DevOps practices, these kind of things. But now it's changed a lot. I can see this. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And then I've got one more question here about how do we do that kind of office water cooler, kitchen coffee gossip whilst we're all remote working? I might jump in and answer a little bit, and then I'll hand it over to sort of April or Huan or Rocky. I know in London and our Manchester offices here, we have a open dial-in for half an hour every day on the same Zoom number. Zoom is our tool of choice at ThoughtWorks for this collaboration in terms of the video conferencing, and anyone can dial in from any of the offices to just have a chat, and it's like an open dial-in to do that. So you know, you get small groups some days and bigger groups other days, and that's where some of that takes place. And we're also fairly prolific using the Google Chat and the Hangouts, you know, for collaboration. So there's a lot of things that go on with that, and checking in with your friends and making sure they're okay. April, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think if you are in China or spend time with Chinese colleagues, the answer to that is WeChat very, very strongly. So WeChat is certainly, and it's almost an official tool when it comes to communicating and connecting with each other in China. And frankly, if you've never seen it and you're outside China, get a Chinese friend to show it to you and join in yourself. Along those lines, Angie's absolutely right. We've got complete freedom in the way that we've set up Hangouts chat for really anybody to start anything. So among other things, there is a global group for dad jokes and a global group for cute cats and dogs. So that kind of connection as well, where anybody can connect to anyone else, is something we really value at ThoughtWorks. And I encourage folks to, you know, make whatever your in-house communication tools are extra open and extra flexible for people right now, to allow that kind of sort of spontaneous connection to happen. And then almost every country is doing something like what Ange is talking about, a desk beers at the end of the day on Friday, having more informal chat conversations, everybody joins, dance parties, game nights, all of that kind of stuff is, I've seen really proliferate around the ThoughtWorks world and around our clients too.
Great, thanks April. I'll do one last one, which was, as people are coming back into the office, what's the feeling as to people coming back? Are they nervous? Are they excited? Can you share some of that, Rocky or Huan?
Huan, do you want to share one? I have some experience. I remember.
Yeah, go ahead. You're in office.
I remember my team members were just be told that you come back to office. Myself, I driven so fast, so come to office and see each other. So we wearing face masks and say hello in a distance to each other, and people really feel exciting because we are. Well, for myself, I've already work from home for nearly 2 months, so it's a really a long time. So I think for now, for myself. In the morning, I work from home, and in the afternoon, I will come to office. And I can see people, they're really like to back to office. And and I think it's need a process to let all of the people come back to office.
Yeah.
I can see
Great.
more about exciting.
Yeah, that's good. And I'm imagining all the cleaning that took place and the masks that you have available mean that, essentially people feel that little bit of security in terms of coming back.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to add that I think taking all the necessary steps and actions to prevent safety is definitely the baseline. Okay,
that's good. Yeah, we probably need to think about something like that for the other places as well. All right, so that kind of concludes our webinar for today. So I'm just going to share some details of future webinars. So firstly, again, as I mentioned at the start, this was recorded today and you'll all receive a recording of today's webinar. So we encourage that for you to share that with colleagues and friends. We hope to see you at some of the next webinars. The next one is on the 30th of April and it's about remote leadership strategies. So you can sign up to that and register and come along. You can see that event and other webinars and other resources that we have available around remote working on our website. It's at thoughtworks.com/COVID-19 is the link if you'd like to see our hub page, which is up there on the screen. So thank you again for coming today and have a great week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.